Welcome, esteemed readers of my advice column. I am truly honored that you chose to confide in me in hopes of acquiring useful advice regarding the matters of your courtship, or, as it were, the lack of it. I shall do my very best to answer your pressing questions. Dear Martha, I am alone and fear I may never experience such love as that of Romeo and Juliet. Have the stars forgotten me? Will I ever find my star-crossed lover? How long must I wait? My heart aches and yearns for love while those around me seem to have it all. Tell me, what must I do to find love as a quiet and lonely Victorian girl? Juliet, Annette, Nicolette, Chloette, Brown. It seems to me that waiting is the wrong approach. Truly, one cannot expect to just stumble upon agreeable suitors at every given opportunity. Some effort is needed, whether it be accepting a dance, asking friends and family to introduce you to a desirable match, or simply opening your heart where it so far has remained closed. Dear Martha, that's me. I was previously introduced to a suitor at a ball by a close friend of mine, and we proceeded to exchange letters for some time before he began an excursion. I have not received word from him since his departure. How unusual. I would endeavor to send an inquiry after him, but do I risk shooting into the brown in such a manner? Your advice would be most appreciated. Sincerely, Amelia Peabody. There is generally no harm in a letter. However, do be warned that were you constantly in his thoughts, he would have surely inquired after you already. There is, of course, a small chance he perished in the seas. But what I do find far more likely is that his excursion provided entertainment enough to forget you, as blunt as it may sound. Dear Martha, I am at a loss and need advice. I met Mr. Smithson through a mutual acquaintance at a dinner party, and we liked each other instantaneously. I have danced with Mr. Smithson at several balls, and he has even dined with my family twice, and taken tea with us on several occasions. We have taken walks in the park with a chaperone, of course, and he has made it clear that he likes me very much, but he has not yet asked for my hand. Everything seems to be going in the right direction, and I love him dearly, but my friends have begun asking me why we are not engaged yet, and I have begun to wonder the same. Mother worries that he does not take our courtship seriously, and I fear she may soon begin to warn me away from him. I dare not bring up the subject with Mr. Smithson, as he might think it forward or improper, but I do not wish to lose him. What shall I do? Yours, Diana. It is a great plague within modern courting that gentlemen fail to declare their intentions early on, or when a lady wishes to discuss the matters of her heart and receive some sort of assurance, she is told that it would be unwise to put a name on it. There is nothing improper in making sure the gentleman's intentions are true. Therefore, I implore you to challenge your sweetheart on the matter, and let the answer decide the future course of the union. Dearest Martha, I must speak now of a gentleman, a man with whom I once shared moments so tender, so spark-filled, that I genuinely believed we might be headed toward lifelong bliss. And then, dear Lord above, he disappeared, vanished, evaporated like the last biscuit at a tea party hosted by ravenous aunts. Not a message, not a smoke signal, not even a poorly calligraphed "you up" at 2 a.m. His affection, it seems, had the lifespan of a child with a chest cold. And to this very day, nary a word has been heard from him. I imagine he now resides in the same spiritual realm as lost socks and men who just need time to figure things out. How might a lady recover from the pangs of affection for a gentleman who hath withdrawn himself entirely, and find solace and composure once more? Lady Anne. As aforementioned, men have a growing tendency to vanish. Not only is it a cruel blow to our trust, it is also a great disrespect that you should not tolerate by conversing with the gentleman any longer. Let the thought of that disrespect aid your healing. For if a man did not consider you worthy of parting with dignity, is he worth pondering on? And rest assured, there are plenty of gentlemen who were raised properly, so do not let that cloud your judgment when making new acquaintances. Some wariness, however, is always recommended when dealing with the opposite sex. Dear Martha, I have been trying to find a husband using a mail-order bride company for some time now, but with little success. You may have heard about personal advertisements for brides placed in Western newspapers like the Chicago Tribune in the recent decade. Well, now Hinge & Co. has expanded these advertisements to cities all across the world. I have indeed heard of these services. I had a photographer take a black and white photograph of me. What do you mean black and white? Is there anything else? But the men I write to have little interest in me, and the men who write to me are not to my taste. What should I do? Sincerely, Agnes Earnshaw. The modern inventions meant to aid the courting process can both be a blessing and a curse. I cannot call myself a great admirer of these new techniques. It would be, however, a great injustice to criticize it, since I happened to encounter my own spouse while flipping through an advertisement section of a local magazine. As with every pursuit, patience and persistence is key, even when one begins to lose hope. And remember that some gentlemen struggle greatly with letters as the means of conversing. So it is always far better to arrange some sort of a formal introduction rather than pick apart the letters line by line, week after week, trying to decipher their meaning. Dear Martha, my betrothed possesses a rather forgetful disposition, and I harbor no desire to embark upon a path of parental admonition or incessant urging. What might be the most judicious means by which I might evoke his recollection of significant dates, obligations, and social engagements? Vera Raydale. It is indeed very troubling to feel like the only person keeping the household intact. However, do keep in mind that there are types of ailments of the human mind that have a little chance of ever being rectified. Does the gentleman's inability to better engage in the household affairs stem from a place of comfort and laziness, since he can be assured there is someone already engaged in those matters? Or does it seem that no matter what you do and how many attempts, he is simply unable to remember? If it is the latter, approach the matter with compassion and consider inquiring after a physician trained in detecting such ailments. If the former, some serious discussions must be had. Dear Martha, back in my youth, I had an engagement with a train conductor for several years. Both our families supported the engagement, but a few years in, we had a cholera outbreak that forced us inside, and he ended the engagement soon after via letter, when we were due to meet mere hours later. I was devastated, of course. I had been devoted to him, and he didn't even have the grace to end the engagement in person. Half a decade passes, I'm visiting some gardens in the summer, and guess who I find tending to the roses? My problem, my dear Martha, is that I think I'm still in love with him, despite his inexcusable behavior. Obviously, we can't be seen together given our circumstances, so I don't know what I, as a proper lady, should do. Dorian Thorne. One cannot help but wonder what was the reason for his inability to properly end the engagement. Was it fear? Was it anticipating your reaction? In any way, such behavior is unacceptable. The only thing working in his favor is the passage of time. One can carefully assume that half a decade was enough time for him to change his ways. However, such are the aged teachings of Professor Delulu, which has since been discredited in the medical community. It is of course entirely possible that he learned nothing from the whole affair and does not even consider his conduct improper. I understand there are more questions that have tortured your mind ever since, and I do believe it is not improper to inquire after the answers. However, do remain cautious, for if someone trifled with your feelings once, they might well do it again. Dear Martha, for some weeks now, my heart has been plagued by conflicting feelings, and I write to you in hopes that your wisdom will lend me some clarity. I have always been of the romantic persuasion, the sort of gentleman who dreams of a profound love, and swaying the heart of his beloved with sonnets and bouquets of wildflowers. I have over time met with several incredibly attractive matches who shall remain nameless. There have been secret escapades and intriguing proposals that made my heart flutter. Yet each time, I find myself turning them away in spite of my yearning. Why, if my soul aches for true love, do I flee when it draws close? It troubles me deeply. I fear that in my pursuit of the ideal love, I have become paralyzed by the thought that none will ever be quite right. And what if I were to mistakenly turn my one true love away? The idea alone fills me with dread. Whatever shall I do? I await your response with a heart full of hope. Yours faithfully, Sir Jonas Loveboat. The only way to overcome those fears is to face them, I'm afraid. Whenever your heart longs to turn away, persist. Whenever it tells you to run away, stay. Whenever it whispers that the person is wrong, acknowledge that it is your mind trying to steer you away from happiness under the guise of regaining peace. Love is a scary affair, but so is loneliness. Dear Martha, I am desperately seeking advice for my current situation. My disposition is bright, but I fear my future is looking bleak. I have been exclusively courting a childhood friend of mine, Mr. Dean, for almost 7 years now. I am 21 years of age and I'm not getting any younger. At this rate, I face becoming a spinster instead of a wife. How might I convince Mr. Dean to make me his Mrs. Dean? Constance Valcourt. While 7 years might seem like a long enough time to finally enter a proper engagement, keep in mind you began courting as children. Unlike what family columns in women's magazine tell you, you are only beginning your life at 21. And there shall be many more changes and storms along the way. It is best to see whether Mr. Dean remains truthfully and duly by your side before entering a formal engagement. If you, however, sense that there is something in his approach to marriage and family life that disagrees with yours, it is worth discussing to make sure it will not lead to disappointment later on. Dear Martha, I have been courting my love for 7 years. Is that the same person? Since we met as young lovers at various balls our parents threw. While we are now of age to marry, between my studies at university and my love's dutiful apprenticeship under the brilliant Miss Mary Anning, we have held off, so that we may wed as the best versions of ourselves. Alas, my schooling has taken me to accept a position in the newly opened country of Japan, and there I shall remain for a period of several months. While letters may help us keep in touch, I worry for the tender heart of my love. Our separation could lead to my love's despair, as while we are often separated and write often, never before has it been through such great distance. What is it that I should do to keep my love's tender heart from breaking? Do not let your feelings prevent you from going on adventures. That is my advice. There is thousands of lovers separated by land and sea, and we live in an era where post is quite speedy, might I say, allowing for frequent communication. Several months may seem unbearable at this point, but they will likely go in the blink of an eye, and you will soon find yourself reunited with your beloved, your bond strengthened, and with many new stories to tell. Dear Martha, it is my duty to bring your attention to the most bizarre adventure that has recently befallen me. I met a charming young man in one of the college courses I am allowed to take. He is my age and of good family. He is courteous and gallant, and I had foolishly believed he was infatuated with me. I was sure that he was courting me, but his flattery never led anywhere, so I had to ask him if his intentions were serious, and I probably made a fool of myself. His answer was this. He had not at all noticed my growing affection for him and, in fact, thought that I only desired to be his friend. Much to his chagrin, he was forced to decline my affection because, according to him, he was considering a career in the church. In the Catholic Church, if I must be precise. I was so shocked by his affirmations that I could only laugh hysterically. What is a lady to do in such a situation? Lady Burnett. It is a growing concern of mine, the way young men trifle with young women's feelings. They strive to achieve familiarity, but shun the responsibilities. And then after employing every tool akin to courtship, they seem surprised, nay, shocked, that a lady should think of the acquaintance with fondness. Laughing seems to be the appropriate reaction, for there is not much more those kinds of gentlemen deserve. Dear Martha, I find myself rather at my wit's end. A week ago, while attending Lady Harrington's ball, I made the acquaintance of one Mr. Henry Tyndall. At first, Mr. Tyndall appeared to embody all the geniality and wit a lady might wish for in a suitor. His conversation, if a touch eager, sparkled with cleverness, and his manners, though enthusiastic, seemed sufficiently well-bred. For a moment, dear Martha, I dared to indulge myself in hopeful reveries of friendship and perhaps, with time, love. These fancies would not last, however, as the budding bloom of hope swiftly revealed its thorns. In the days that followed, Mr. Tyndall's attentions grew not only more frequent, but alarmingly fervent. Where once his words had charmed, they now pressed upon me with the weight of unwanted urgency. He began to appear at every turn, upon my daily walks, at the milliner's, even intruding upon the sanctity of my quiet afternoons at home. I confess I have had to make use of deceptions such as feigning fainting spells and illnesses, all in desperate hope that he might take his leave and give me a moment's respite. I have told him in as many ways as words would allow that his affections are unwanted and unappreciated. I confess to you, with all the sincerity in my keeping, that I am quite at the end of my patience and do not know what to do short of resorting to violence. Pray, Martha, how might I rid myself of Mr. Tyndall's entreaties one and for all? With all sincerity and desperation, Adeline Whitlock. It is quite shocking the stubbornness with which gentlemen, or men rather, for there is nothing gentle about their manner, choose to bestow their feelings upon an unwanting recipient. There is a point, however, in which one has to employ some help, whether it is a male relative, a group of dear friends, or even getting the police involved. Someone must stop Mr. Tyndall in his tracks before your gentle mind becomes unwell, or something worse happens. I believe we should treat such cases with utmost seriousness, for no lady deserves to be troubled by a man she was once cordial to. Dear Martha, since our youth, a wonderful lady and I have been bosom friends, and she is my dearest confidant in the entire world. Spending soirees and balls together, convincing our parents to share tutors so that we may study in unison, embroidering handkerchiefs for each other, we share a kinship so close, I would believe ourselves to be woven of the same fabric. My heart yearns for no lord the way it yearns for her. But dear Martha, although I see no fault in my feelings, I am afraid she does not reciprocate. So far, I have not been able to gather the courage and speak plainly with her. One magical night, in the midnight garden of the Queen's Ball, she confessed to me that she would most desire to marry me if such a thing were possible. However, to my great chagrin, so far, she has only discussed potential relationships with undeserving lords, for her family desires for her to find a suitable match as well. I am afraid my heart will soon tear itself to pieces with uncertainty, but I would never want to tarnish our wonderful friendship with foolish confessions. Is there a way to determine if she reciprocates my feelings at all? A friend of Sappho. I do find it concerning the way she declared with such easiness that she would marry you. Is it possible she was, say, testing the waters in order to see what reaction such declaration brings? Could it be that her family's pressure to find a suitable match prevents her from expressing her feelings for you? In any way, I do believe such matters should be discussed even at the cost of a great kinship. Otherwise, one person remains secretly a prisoner of the other. Dear Martha, I regret to inform you that I am a spinster at the ripe old age of 32. Not only do I remain unwed, but I have not had a single serious suitor throughout my 3 decades of life, at least not one which I regarded with the same level of affection. I am not inclined to the religious life, nor am I content to be the eavesdropping aunt of music hall comedies. I know of other women who have happily found their match at my age, yet I cannot help but feel that my vast inexperience and natural shyness has rendered me incapable of following their example. Tell me, dear Martha, is my situation hopeless? P.S. My sentiments have a touch of lavender to them. Lavender Spinster. As shocking as this may sound for a person of my standing to say, this is entirely normal. In fact, I did not court anyone before I met my dear Reginald. Long nights of pondering on whether I even deserve anyone's affection, since I've been so long denied it, are behind me, but I remember them well. What I would suggest is a change of strategy. Since whatever you did to find yourself a proper lady did not succeed, it is time to do the opposite. If you avoided looking for one in the male, it is time to start. If you were attending dances and balls in hopes of finding one, try book clubs instead. If you perhaps had a habit of giving your attention to the flimsy beauties that did not care one bit about you, maybe it would now be wise to give a chance to the shy intellectuals. In this war on loneliness, you need to be fierce. Do not let your inexperience or shyness keep you back. Dear Martha, I will be trying my best to write in the Shakespearean language, as I am cursed with being a Frenchman. It was 20 springs ago. I was merely a sprog, bored at the chess club, and I kid you not, I met the most beautiful eyes mine could never dream to meet one day. Her name was Constance. The most shocking of facts was that she as well liked me. My left cheek once had the honor to receive the sweetest of gifts, a kiss from the girl I loved. The chess club shifted from being a lieu of ennui to a place where I felt loved and alive. Sadly, my dear family decided to move to Paris, far away from my countryside love. Aeons have passed, I've grown into a fine gentleman, and I'm traveling as an artist around my beloved country, with all my past buried under the years of work and traumas like every other respectable French person. One day, I received a letter. When I laid my eyes upon the first words, my heart nearly surrendered. It was her, Constance. She moved heaven and earth to find me. I couldn't believe it. My memories flooded back in my mind. Her eyes, her name, her kiss. So we sent letters to each other for a long time, catching up and talking about our young adult life. I feel alive again. Terrified too. In a mere few months, I am going to meet her in person at a gallery after 2 decades separated. I know for a fact, after a long time of exchange, that she isn't romantically available for now. Martha, what is your wisdom for this date? I fear that this love may be one-sided this time. Should I preserve it for a more fortunate time, or should I bury this love back to where it originated in the past? Sincerely yours, Sir Bergerou de la Soupe. I must admit, the end of your letter has me quite concerned. All this exchange of letters and thoughts, only for her to not be available. Is it due to some different union or her own obligations? Either way, it does not seem like a good time to inquire after her feelings. I implore you to observe where the meeting is going, but at any sign of indifference or overt friendliness, withhold your feelings, in case they might be unwanted. In fact, it might be better to see if a second meeting is suggested and wait for a more convenient time to reveal your true feelings. After all, 2 decades is a long time, and you should get to know her character first. It is entirely possible that you are in love with a vision of her, rather than the Constance she is now. Dear Martha, I earnestly request your advice, always given with such grace and good sense. In this matter concerning my beloved Michael, although I've always known him to be a sullen and downtrodden creature, my foolish heart desired an engagement. 2 summers ago, his want of new employment, with all its attractions against our humble and rural home, led us to run away to the coast. Oh, my folly in this without a secure engagement. I now live as an invalid, with little friends and fewer family to nurse me as tenderly as Michael upon his return for supper. I feel quite unworthy of his love, yet remain indignant his love is rarely professed. Our precious feelings persist, but how can one be sure of such an attachment and constancy without an engagement? His reservations with the ceremony of marriage push me to such an acute melancholy. I am approaching 27. If I am persuaded to remove myself from these 4 years of entanglement, what will become of my prospects? I freely admit I have never been particularly handsome, and my talents for science and writing are particularly undesirable. Shall I remain in ridiculous love, or resign myself to become a disagreeable old maid? Respectfully, disconsolate in Devonshire. I must admit, you make it sound as if an engagement is required as a solution to your problems, but I sense there are more pressing matters regarding your predicament. Living away by the seaside with little friends or family, and in your delicate condition, it might feel like you have no other choice but to resign yourself to him. But is it really Michael you want, or is it the feeling to be cared for and secure? One should not desire marriage just to avoid courting again. Perhaps there is a gentleman that would do all Michael does, but would not feel so adamant on the matter of marriage that is so close to your heart. I suggest looking into your heart and ensuring it is not purely a matter of convenience that keeps yourself where you currently are. Good Martha, I'm seeking your help in a helpless matter. I have been married to my husband for 8 years and we are extremely happy. Lately I have noticed him being more distant and distressed with his work matters. His distant cousin, who is practically a brother to him, they grew up together, has been visiting us for several times, trying to help him with his work. The cousin is a handsome man, kind and of a good humor. Now, with my husband being distant and his cousin being very attentive and kind to me, I must confess I might have a crush on him. Oh, Martha, what should I do? I love my husband and I don't want to complicate their relationship, but it burns me to see him leave, and the only thing I can think of when he is gone is him. Desperate. I am quite shocked at your revelations. It is only natural to consider other gentlemen agreeable, but why even entertain the thought of acting on those feelings? Especially since the said gentleman is not only a relative by marriage, but a closest of friends to your husband. Your loyalties lie there. And if the work matters distress him so, it is even more so your duty to be there and offer your support, is it not? Dearest Martha, I do find myself in a predicament concerning matters of the heart, and I write to seek your kind and wise counsel. There is a charming gentleman merchant residing in the New World for whom I have come to have strong admiration. He carries himself with kindness and he is quite industrious with his hands. His work inspires joy and goodwill in those that witness it. Fortune brought me to him through the medium of long-distance communication intended for strangers, called the Social Gazette. I am but a humble spinster from the edge of the great empire who finds his work simply delightful, that my fondness for him ever grows as I engage with his artistry and humility. I have penned him many a note expressing my being enamored, but I always fall short of sending them. I do believe that a gentleman of his refined character does frequently receive such messages, and I would abhor to be viewed as disrespectful and intrusive. I thus ask, if it is proper to pen a note to the lovely gentleman, respectfully expressing my admiration and fondness, or put my flights of fancy to rest. A spinster in thread, station and at heart, Ethel. As I have previously said, there is no harm in a letter. I do advise you to be cautious, however. As you have already noted, a gentleman of his standing surely is keeping correspondence with plenty of ladies. If your message is ignored or kindly rejected, pay it no mind and cease the correspondence. If it is accepted, do not let your admiration of the gentleman's skills cloud your judgment and remain skeptical. That is my advice. Dear Martha, I am in my later years and have been made to notice that my family and friends wish for me to make a match. As a woman, I suppose it is my duty, but I would rather make myself meals whenever I like, walk and talk with whomever I choose, and retire to bed with nothing more than a soft cat as company. How do I make plainer to my relatives the joys of living for my own happiness, rather than the constant work of keeping a husband? Is there a delicate way to extricate myself from this expectation? Sincerely, Miss Comfort Abel. There seems to be a general misunderstanding of people content with their independence. It is especially difficult to convey such preference to those used to their own way of thinking. I say, make one last attempt at expressing your true feelings, after which you are, in my opinion, fully entitled to require no more mention of it. Dear Martha, I humbly beseech your wisdom on a matter most vexing. Though I am soon to be joyfully betrothed to a most honourable gentleman, I find myself tormented by the cruel machinations of two loathsome aunts. They are mine own blood, who, alas, take the greatest delight in my sorrows. My mere happiness turns to ash in their hands, which they make sport to trample upon. I am shadowed by an ever-dark tower in their presence, as they do berate my every move, especially in the matters of my heart. The occasion of my wedding, though joyful, plagues me with a question. Ought I to extend an invitation to these ever-meddlesome matriarchs? To do so would preserve appearances, yet at the cost of them sullying my most precious day. I await your counsel, madam, your distressed bride-to-be, Lady Copenelly. Your wedding is the one day you should only think of yourself. And if their presence would be in any way vexing to you, I believe you are free to omit them from the guest list. It is of course entirely possible they shall never speak to you again. The real question is, would your heart weep at the loss of such acquaintance? Are such evil creatures even worth knowing? Dear Martha, I have heard that you are of particular adeptness in matters of courtship, so I am. I should like to disclose to you my ponderous situation. I am quite an old maid now, approaching my 25th year, and have only just this spring come into what seemed to be a promising acquaintance with a delightful gentleman of good reputation. Mr. Graham and I have pursued acquaintance by going on various outings to provide opportunity for good conversation. Always we end up talking for hours. And I do believe that this has resulted in affections on both sides. This all seems well and good, however, the trouble lies in our communication. I regretfully find myself to be the one writing all the letters. This being the situation, one would assume that my gentleman has abandoned any attachments or interest in me that he may have previously held. But when we occasionally meet at a public tea house or to stroll through the park or to view a gallery, he suggests no second thoughts or cooled emotions. We, without fail, engage in long, lively conversation and afterward part ways with mutual enthusiasm to continue our courtship. But then, alas, I proceed to hear nothing from him for above a week. Pray, dear Martha, what shall I do about my seemingly perfect but maddeningly elusive suitor? Yours respectfully, Miss Healy. Some gentlemen are truly hopeless at writing letters. I think it would not be unwise to inquire after the reasons for his silence, or express your willingness to receive correspondence more often. Shall he then fail to improve his behavior, you could assume there are other reasons. That you have mistaken his cordiality for affections, and that he is indeed not as enamored with you as you are with him. Dearest Martha, I fear I am in desperate need of both your advice and a great deal of bravery. For there is a lady. We found one another in the papers with only a handful of words and a spare portrait to connect us, and in an instant I was drawn to her beauty and jesting tone. On the first occasion she wrote to me, I could hardly believe my luck. Before I knew it, a fortnight has passed, hardly leaving my writing desk for how often we shared our small letters, discussing everything from our favorite novels to the matters of identity and the heart. Upon our first meeting, we took a turn about a garden before attending an opera, and dearest Martha, she was even lovelier in person, both in the softness in her eyes and the kindness of her words. I admit I was a little stunned, my hands trembling on more than one occasion throughout the evening. But here is my problem, dear Martha. I am unfortunately terribly shy. I am seeing the lady again tomorrow for tea, and I am disquieted by the notion that I will not possess the same openness and cleverness face to face that I do through our letters. It is so much harder to be clever and bold when she is before me, and it is so very easy to make a fool of myself when I get all tongue-tied and clumsy. I like her entirely too much already, and I am frightened I will do something silly to ruin it before we can even begin. For I am, as the poet Sappho once said, unable to even do my weaving as Aphrodite has overcome me. How can I express what I think and feel despite my shyness? How do I be brave? With deepest gratitude, Margaret. Not every feeling that is inconvenient is unnatural. In fact, it sounds terribly normal to fear a meeting such as this and not be able to express yourself fully upon the first or second introduction to a lovely person. It is not impossible that the lady is currently overcome by the very same feelings and fears. You have already formed a valuable connection in pen, so assuming she might be put off by your demeanor is unwise in my opinion. And should shyness get overwhelming, I am certain she would appreciate you asking for her understanding and expressing bluntly that the whole endeavor puts your nerves through a storm. Dear Martha, I, being a lady of class and refinement, have undoubtedly attracted many admirers and not necessarily only of the male sex. One would think that such an array of potential suitors would flatter me, but alas, I feel nothing but dismay upon hearing their tender professions of love and admiration. The truth is simple, none shall ever have my heart. How they plead for my address, as they wish to send me letters late in the night, but I've no interest in reading their messages. But how can I express that? This is my dilemma. To accept their proposals would be dishonesty, but to reject them would break their poor sensitive hearts. Pray tell, what must I say? How might I express my sentiments or lack thereof without shattering the dreams of these unlucky ladies and gentlemen? Adeline P. Lamb. To be cursed with eliciting admiration while not longing for any is indeed a tragedy. Perhaps there is a way to alert them early on to your staunch dislike of courtship, so they do not garner any hope in their heart. Now that the damage is done, nothing else remains but to give them a kind but firm rejection. But it is something to consider for the future, as it seems to be a recurring problem. Dear Martha, my friend Elizabeth and I We're both introduced to two gentlemen at the same ball. Both of us started courting these men. 3 years later, my gentleman is my husband and father of our beautiful baby daughter. Elizabeth's gentleman has still not made his intentions clear. I know Elizabeth has set her heart on marrying this man. I fear he is leading her not to the altar, but to sin and ruin. I do not intend to be a busybody, but I seek to protect my friend. What do I do? Busybody friend. Courtship, marriage, and the family in 3 years. It seems that you wasted no time. But Elizabeth and her gentleman might follow a different path, a slower one perhaps. While I do not know Elizabeth's expectations of her situation, I would not rush into action just yet. Chère Martha, I require your immediate support as I am terribly clueless on how to handle my predicament. I am currently doing my studies abroad and have a sweetheart at home who I have been pining over since the moment we met 20 years ago, and it turned out that he felt the same. He is the first man that makes me feel comfortable around him, and I love him so much. We have been courting each other since 4 years now, but me being abroad has slowed things down considerably. Now that the end of my studies is nearing, he desires nothing more than to live together. The problem is that deep in my heart I strongly feel that I shall never be able to live with another person, or at least not anytime soon. Nothing brings me more delight than being and living by myself and having my own place. I know for a fact that I will not be comfortable or feel at home if we were to live together. How do I tell him about these feelings without hurting him? I do not want to lose him because he is the only person I have ever loved and will ever love. There is a reason why I am so very sure about this that I cannot openly discuss to protect my privacy. Regardless, I sincerely hope that you can help me, chère Martha. Bien à vous, Cléo. You should discuss the matter with the gentleman as soon as possible if your desires are thus misaligned. I do not wish to pry after your reasoning, but is there any room for negotiation? Could you possibly ask him to put the matter aside for now, as you take your time to think of a proper solution? This is a very delicate matter, as both of you deserve to live in perfect happiness. Dear Martha, I am writing in utter agony, and despair closed at my skirts, threatening me to fall upon the floor in complete hopelessness. It was not even a year when I met this incredible gentleman, a viscount's son, who had been emboldened to pursue his hobbies of sailing and carousing with merchants. We exchanged countless letters. I had even thought he meant to propose to me perhaps someday. Then, tragedy. I have not heard from my dear Reginald in months. His ship was lost at sea. His last voyage struck by Poseidon. Some of his merchant friends claimed that he had arrived safely at his port in France. But this is impossible, as he surely would have contacted me as soon as he arrived. They even claimed this spectre was exchanging poetry with another woman. Impossible. I am at a loss of how to cope with my grief. Some tell me to simply forget my one true love. Others encourage me to believe in these tales of phantoms. Should I resign myself to chasing ghosts? Or do I ask my heart to learn how to forget the warmth of Reginald? Kind regards, distressed widow. Those manly spectres are more and more common, and loving a ghost would be rather unwise. Whether or not his shadow is serenading another now should not be a concern of yours. Take your time to grieve his disappearance and move on to another. My beloved Martha, for the past 3 years, I am in a relationship with a former friend of mine. Recently, as I work in the colonies and she works in the mainland, we are not seeing each other much. I sent her letters that indicate my interest of her life and well-being, in addition to narrating my life in the colonies. I know love is not a trade agreement that requires both sides to give in equal terms, but nonetheless, I feel as if I am neglected in a way. She is so busy, even not to send a single letter about me in months. And even when she does, she only concerns herself with her life in the mainland and does not even ask me about my health, which she knows is not in a good shape. When I confronted her about this situation, she yelled at me, vented about how I do not understand her situation and that she has absolutely no time even to think about me in her busy life. At the end, she accepted and apologized for her actions while crying, but I was hurt. I do not know what to do, and sometimes I think about ending the relationship. I know it is a one-sided plead, but I hope you understand me. I am waiting for your reply. Sincerely, Melith. No life is busy enough to forget where one's heart truly lies. I am therefore inclined to believe that your love, being separated from you, has discovered the pleasantries of life more tempting than your company, but it brings her comfort there is someone waiting. If after expressing your feelings so fully, her behavior shall remain the same, I would take it as a confirmation of that thought. Dear Martha, I must request your advice on a situation most foul. There exists a fair maiden, one such as myself, that I find I am utterly incapable of ridding my thoughts of. The problem herein lies in the matter that I have already once engaged in courtship with the lady. The matter is rather intricate. We commenced our dalliance for a duration of the year, experienced the separation, rekindled our affection 2 years hence, only to culminate in another parting just shy of a year thereafter. It has now been approximately 2 years since our last farewell and over 5 since our initial engagement. Yet I still cannot surmount my feelings for her. There remains a pronounced absence of closure. We concluded our schooling, thus she chose to part ways with me for an internship in a distant town, a good 6 hours hence. Only I found that engagement lasted but 2 months before we were brought to the same locale once more. Yet she then seemingly vanished from the realm, no longer communicating with our mutual acquaintances, as if she had simply dissolved into the ether. I do not yearn to re-establish our romantic bond, yet I find the absence of my closest companion more poignant than any other longing. I beseech your counsel in this matter. P.S. I find it notable to articulate that I find myself rather solitary in the realm of companionship during these days, and I am indeed tragically deficient in social graces. Clementine. She seems to be appearing and disappearing from your life, like some sort of ghostly creature, and with each apparition, your feelings for her awaken twice as strong. This, combined with your lack of other courtships to entertain you, seem to be the problem. I firmly believe that were you two destined to join hands in marriage, it would have happened already and without complication. Years go by and you should focus on other prospects. For there might be someone much more fruitful and poignant around the corner, which you are unable to reach when held back by the shadows of the past. Dear Martha, recently at a ball, I danced every dance with a rake named Charlie. He is known for breaking engagements and behaving in an ungentlemanly manner to those he is courting. Though I knew it would cause some scandal to dance with him, he was so charming I found it hard to care. Throughout the night, he told me how long he had wanted to dance with me and how he hoped to do it again often in the coming season. The next morning, I told my friend Beatrice, and she informed me that Charlie had secretly been courting a friend of hers, Ada. I, of course, immediately wrote a letter to tell Ada, and I hear she is quite heartbroken and has called off the engagement. My dilemma is that while I would not like to court Charlie, I would very much like to continue to dance with him. As they will not be formally engaged, I think Charlie and I should be free to dance. But I know this would upset Ada, which would put Beatrice in an awkward position. Flora. I see no real value in dancing with a snake. And there's plenty of partners to dance with, equally or even more pleasurable than a man who has no respect for you or your friends. Do not let your desire for dancing cloud your judgment, as you might find yourself in a difficult situation. Dear Martha, I hope this letter finds you in good spirits. Much better than my own at the present. It is painful to admit, but ever since Tom and I moved abroad, something vital between us has grown cold. The tenderness that once made the risks worthwhile has faded, and in its place have settled habit, and all too often his ungovernable temper. I find myself so far from my beloved home, wondering whether I ought to leave. But I am not young, Martha, and I am petrified by the thought of never being loved again. Tell me honestly, am I a coward for staying? Should I still keep hope in my heart that things might yet improve? Lady Adelaide. Moving abroad seems like a significant change, one that is difficult to you both. It is possible that the predicament is temporary only, and will ease with time. Do not, however, let your fear of loneliness keep you from following your heart. Dear Martha, my husband Edward, whom I love dearly, has recently declared that he wishes to leave his job at the railway office. I must follow my passion, he said, while battering toast with unusual intensity. I had hoped his passion might be punctual income. Alas, It appears to be self-employment. He speaks vaguely of working with his hands and being his own master. I have known Edward for 13 years. The only thing he's built in that time was a shelf that immediately collapsed under the weight of a single teacup. And he is not even a master of his own sock drawer. Still, I see in his eyes the gleam of a man convinced that fulfillment lies just beyond the next financial disaster. I want to support him truly. But I also want to keep children in boots, and myself in candles. I've tried to suggest he secure another position before leaving his current one, but he muttered something about the tyranny of timetables, and then went to the shed, where I fear he is now communing with a broken wheelbarrow. Martha, how does one balance dreams with the price of coal? How do I remain the encouraging wife while gently reminding him that inspiration, though noble, does not pay the milkman? Franny Cunningham. I assume the position he was previously at brought him much grievance and affected his well-being, but the well-being of you and your children is also at stake. And so I would negotiate possibly agreeing on a particular date. Shall your husband manage to secure his own business by that time and reach the agreed goals, he then would be allowed to continue. If, however, the set date goes by and no business is in sight, he should go back to the work he found so unpleasant, simply because hunger is not a pleasant thing either. Gracious greetings, my dearest Martha. Thank you. I find myself in quite the dilemma and solicit your precious and sensible advice. My darling sailor, the Commodore, is quite enamored with my person, and I am beginning to acquire a fondness for his person as well. The Commodore and I are in a quarrel, as he says that I am very much held back by my Regency-style beliefs, about a lady not being too forward before the proper formalities have been met. The Commodore has respected my beliefs and not imposed himself upon me, yet I feel I must set him free, as I do not wish to detain his will. Please advise me, dear Martha, as I do not see any other way around this issue. Always grateful, your friend and most thankful pen pal, Hyacinth. A true gentleman will never disrespect a lady's beliefs, let alone try to persuade her to abandon them. It is just as much about setting him free as it is about setting yourself free from a man who expects you to yield to his expectations. Dear Martha, for some time I find myself engaged in a deep courtship with a fair and lovely lady, who I dare say I love well and earnestly. The matter arises from finding that, conspicuously, the dame seems to have a penchant for vocalizing every worldly thought that seems to pass her intellect. I wonder if perhaps being of a masculine persuasion makes me less tolerant of such talk of trivialities, for we know that the female mind is naturally more prone to discussing the mundane. I travel far and wide in my vocation, and the repose of a wanderer lies in silence and solitude, though I am mindful of the emotional tendencies of my beloved. How shall I approach the topic without having her resort to her salts, as she often does when anything vexes her gentle constitution? Troubled and sincerely yours, E.L. Hawthorne. Is this something that can be corrected, or is this a natural predisposition? It is possible that the lady feels so comfortable with you as to abandon all shackles of society which taught her to be silent. It is also possible there is not much she can do about it, for her talkativeness is an integral part of her being. You can delicately suggest your need for silence and agree on a period during the day or your travels when that would be applied, but to expect someone to change their whole demeanor is unwise. Dear Martha, it began with a letter, unlike any other I'd ever seen. Unusual paper, edges gilded, and sealed with a crest so exalted I felt a shiver of destiny. Prince Shackleford of the distant kingdom of Alarmir wrote in the most genteel hand explaining his tragic exile and the entrapment of his fortune, 20,000 sovereigns, in the Bank of Constantinople. He said he had searched the world for someone both noble and discreet and found in me, Lady Margaret Whittingham, the ideal confidant. Prince Shackleford requested I assist with the necessary ministerial arrangements, but alas, I find myself consumed with all manner of doubt. What sort of a woman am I to doubt such honor in a man of royal blood? Tell me, doctor of the heart, when a man writes of loyalty, suffering, and treasure in the same breath, is that not love? Lady Margaret Whittingham. Lady Margaret, I fear for your finances, for it is a common trickery. In fact, if you discreetly inquire upon your friends, you will find that they too received similar letters. Do not be as foolish as to believe this man's advances, for he is only after your savings. Dear Martha, I'm troubled and perhaps deluded by the eloquence of the men in the books I read to while away my evenings. They have possessed my fancies to an alarming extent. Every ball I go to, I find myself wishing to find someone akin to them. Alas, that is very whimsical of me. For now, the speech of men is pretty crass for my taste. I might as well be a spinster in this life. Prithee, Martha, your wise words might be my only salvation. Abigail. The sole reason literary men seem so desirable is that they do not exist. In fact, their characters are so tempting simply because they are not real. They do not snore, they do not get irksome, they do not forget. Their literary descriptions are an ideal that we fall so easily prey to, which then makes it harder for us to appreciate real human beings. For how can they compare to ideals? I would advise remembering that while the book characters have some qualities we can look for when trying to find a suitor, they are, after all, a fantasy, and we should not hold men to a fantasy standard. These seem to be all the letters I have received, for which I am so grateful. I pray that each and every one of you finds encouragement and hope in these answers. Thank you.